Welcome to What's Happening podcast, and I'm your host, Free. You guys, sorry for the wait, but this is the time where the kiddies are going back to school, so we took a little small hiatus. But we're back with chapter 4 of the book that we are reading, The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I see that you guys were really enjoying chapter 3, and chapter 4 is just as yummy. So let's get right into it. Chapter 4, Love Language number 1, Words of Affirmation. Mark Twain once said, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. If we take Twain literally, 6 compliments a year would have kept his emotional love tank at the operational level. Your spouse will probably need more. One way to express love emotionally is to use words that build up. Solomon, author of the ancient Hebrew wisdom literature, wrote, the tongue has the power of life and death. Many couples have never learned the tremendous power of verbally affirming each other. Solomon further noted, an anxious heart weighs a man down, but a kind word cheers him up. Verbal compliments or words of appreciation are powerful communicators of love. They are best expressed in simple, straightforward statements of affirmation, such as, you look sharp in that suit. Do you ever look hot? Do you ever look hot in that dress? Wow. I really like how you've always on time to pick me up at work. Thanks for getting the babysitter lined up tonight. I want you to know I don't take that for granted. I love how you are so responsible. I feel like I can count on you. What would happen to the emotional climate of a marriage if the husband and wife heard such words of affirmation regularly? Several years ago, I was sitting in my office with my door open. A lady walking down the hall said, have you got a minute? Sure, come in. She sat down and said, Dr. Chapman, I've got a problem. I can't get my husband to paint our bedroom. I have been after him for 9 months. I have tried everything I know, and I can't get him to paint it. My first thought was, lady, you are at the wrong place. I am not a paint contractor. But I said, tell me about it. She said, well, last Saturday was a good example. You remember how pretty it was? Do you know what my husband did all day long? He worked on updating his computer. So what did you do? I went in there and said, Dan, I don't understand you. Today would have been a perfect day to paint the bedroom, and here you are working on your computer. So did he paint the bedroom? I inquired. No, he's still not painted. It's still not painted. I don't know what to do. Let me ask you a question, I said. Are you opposed to computers? No, but I want the bedroom painted. Are you certain that your husband knows that you want the bedroom painted? I know he does, she said. I have been after him for 9 months. Let me ask you one more question. Does your husband ever do anything good? Like what? Oh, like taking the garbage out? Or getting bugs off the windshield of the car you drive? Or putting gas in the car? Or paying the electric bill? Or hanging up his coat? Yes, she said. He does some of these things. Then I have two suggestions. One, don't ever mention painting the bedroom again. I repeated, don't ever mention it again. I don't see how that's going to help, she said. Look, you just told me that he knows that you want the bedroom painted. You don't have to tell him anymore. He already knows. The second suggestion I have is that the next time your husband does anything good, Give him a verbal compliment. If he takes the garbage out, say, Dan, I want you to know that I really appreciate your taking the garbage out. Don't say, about time you took the garbage out. The flies were going to carry it out for you. If you see him paying the electric bill, put your hand on his shoulder and say, Dan, I really appreciate you paying the electric bill. I hear there are husbands who don't do that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it. Or, I really appreciated you taking the kids off my hands when I had to finish that project. Every time he does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. I don't see how that's going to get the bedroom painted, I said. You asked for my advice. You have it. It's free. She wasn't very happy with me when she left. 3 weeks later, however, she came back to my office and said, it worked. She had learned that verbal compliments are greater motivators than nagging words. I am not suggesting verbal flattery in order to get your spouse to do something you want. And we all know what verbal flattery is, guys. The object of love is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well being of the one you love. It is a fact, however, that when we receive affirming words, we are far more likely to be motivated to reciprocate and do something our spouse desires. Encouraging words. Giving verbal compliments is only one way to express words of affirmation to your spouse. Another dialect is encouraging words. The word encourage means to inspire and courage. To inspire courage. All of us have areas in which we feel insecure. We lack courage, and that lack of courage often hinders us from accomplishing the positive things that we would like to do. The latent potential within your spouse in his or her area of insecurity may await your encouraging words. Allison had always liked to write. Late in her college career, she took a few courses in journalism. She quickly realized that her excitement about writing exceeded her interest in history, which had been her academic major. It was too late to change majors, but after college, and especially before the first baby, she wrote several articles. She submitted one article to a magazine, but when she received a rejection slip, she never had the courage to submit another. Now that the children were older and she had more time to contemplate, Allison was again writing. Keith, Allison's husband, had paid little attention to Allison writing in the early days of their marriage. He was busy with his own vocation and caught up in the pressure of climbing the corporate ladder. In time, however, Keith had realized that life's deepest meaning is not found in accomplishments, but in relationships. He had learned to give more attention to Allison and her interests. So it was quite natural one night for him to pick up one of Allison's articles and read it. When he finished, he went into the den where Allison was reading a book. With great enthusiasm, he said, I hate to interrupt your reading, but I have to tell you this. I just finished reading your article on making the most of the holidays. Allison, you are an excellent writer. This stuff ought to be published. You write clearly. Your words paint pictures that I can visualize. You have a fascinating style. You have to submit this stuff to some magazines. Do you really think so? Allison asked hesitantly. I know so, Keith said. I'm telling you, this is good. When Keith left the room, Allison did not resume her reading. With the closed book in her lap, she dreamed for 30 minutes about what Keith had said. She wondered if others would view her writing the same way he did. She remembered the rejection slip she had received years before, but she reasoned that she was a different person now. Her writing was better. She had had more experiences. Before she left the chair to get a drink of water, Allison had made a decision. She would submit her articles to some magazines. She would see if they could be published. Keith's encouraging words were spoken many years ago. Allison has had numerous articles published since then, and now has a book contract. She is an excellent writer, but it took the encouraging words from her husband to inspire her to take the first step in the arduous process of getting an article published. Perhaps your spouse has untapped potential in one or more areas of life. That potential may be awaiting your encouraging words. Perhaps she needs to enroll in a course to develop that potential. Maybe he needs to meet some people who have succeeded in that area who can give him insight on the next step he needs to take. Your words may give your spouse the courage necessary to take the first step. Please note that I am not talking about pressuring your spouse to do something that you want. I'm talking about encouraging him to develop an interest that he already has. For example, a wife might pressure her husband to look for a more lucrative job. The wife thinks she's encouraging her spouse, but to him it sounds more like condemnation. But if he has the desire and motivation to seek a better position, her words will bolster his resolve. Until he has that desire, her words will come across as judgmental and guilt inducing. They express not love, but rejection. If, however, he says, I've been thinking about starting a handyman business on the side, then she has an opportunity to give words of encouragement. Encouraging words would sound like this. If you decide to do that, I can tell you one thing. You will be a success. That's one of the things I like about you. When you set your mind to something, you do it. If that's what you want to do, I will certainly do everything I can to help you. Such words may give him the courage to start drawing up a list of potential clients. Encouragement requires empathy and seeing the world from your spouse's perspective. We must first learn what is important to our spouse. Only then can we give encouragement. With verbal encouragement, we are trying to communicate, I know, I care, I am with you, how can I help? We are trying to show that we believe in him and his abilities. We are giving credit and praise. Most of us have more potential than we will ever develop. What holds us back is often a lack of courage. A loving spouse can supply that all important catalyst. Of course, encouraging words may be difficult for you to speak. It may be your primary love language. It may take great effort for you to learn this second language. That will be especially true if you have a pattern of critical and condemning words. But I can assure you that it will be worth the effort. Kind words. Love is kind. If then we are to communicate love verbally, we must use kind words. That has to do with the way we speak. The same sentence can have two different meanings, depending on how you say it. The statement, I love you, when said with kindness and tenderness, can be a genuine expression of love. But what about, I love you? The question mark changes the whole meaning of those three words. Sometimes our words say one thing, but our tone of voice says another. We are sending double messages. Our spouse will usually interpret our message based on our tone of voice, not the words we use. I would be delighted to wash dishes tonight, said in a snarling tone, will not be received as an expression of love. On the other hand, we can share hurt, pain, and even anger in a kind manner, and that will be an expression of love. I felt disappointed and hurt that you didn't offer to help me this evening, said in an honest, kind manner, can be an expression of love. The person speaking wants to be known by her spouse. She is taking steps to build intimacy by sharing her feelings. She is asking for an opportunity to discuss a hurt in order to find healing. The same words expressed with a loud, harsh voice will be not an expression of love, but an expression of condemnation and judgment. The manner in which we speak is exceedingly important. As ancient sage once said, a soft answer turns away anger. When your spouse is angry and upset and lashing out with words of heat, if you choose to be loving, you will not reciprocate with additional heat, but with a soft voice. You will receive what he is saying as information about his emotional feelings. You will let him tell you of his hurt, anger, and perception of events. You will seek to put yourself in his shoes and see the event through his eyes, and then express softly and kindly your understanding of why he feels that way. If you have wronged him, you will be willing to confess the wrong and ask forgiveness. If your motivation is different from what he is reading, you will be able to explain your motivation kindly. You will seek understanding and reconciliation, and not to prove your own perspective as the only logical way to interpret what has happened. That is mature love, love to which we aspire if we seek a growing marriage. Love doesn't keep a score of wrongs. Love doesn't bring up past failures. None of us is perfect. In marriage, we do not always do the best or the right thing. We have sometimes done and said hurtful things to our spouses. We cannot erase the past. We can only confess it and agree that it was wrong. We can ask for forgiveness and try to act differently in the future. Having confessed my failure and asked forgiveness, I can do nothing more to mitigate the hurt it may have caused my spouse. When I have been wronged by my spouse and she has painfully confessed it and requested forgiveness, I have the option of justice or forgiveness. If I choose justice and seek to pay her back or make her pay for her wrongdoing, I am making myself the judge and she the felon. Intimacy becomes impossible. If, however, I choose to forgive, intimacy can be restored. Forgiveness is the way of love. I am amazed by how many individuals mess up every new day with yesterday. They insist on bringing into today the failures of yesterday, and in doing so, they pollute a potentially wonderful day. I can't believe you did it. I don't think I'll ever forget it. You can't possibly know how much you hurt me. I don't know how you can sit there so smugly after you treated me that way. You ought to be crawling on your knees begging me for forgiveness. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Those are not the words of love, but of bitterness and resentment and revenge. The best thing we can do with the failures of the past is to let them be history. Yes, it happened. Certainly, it hurt, and it may still hurt, but he has acknowledged his failure and asked your forgiveness. We cannot erase the past, but we can accept it as history. We can choose to live today free from the failures of yesterday. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a commitment. It is a choice to show mercy. not to hold the offense up against the offender. Forgiveness is an expression of love. I love you, I care about you, and I choose to forgive you. Even though my feelings of hurt may linger, I will not allow what has happened to come between us. I hope that we can learn from this experience. You are not a failure because you have failed. You are my spouse, and together we will go from here. Those are the words of affirmation expressed in the dialect of kind words. Well, y'all, that was a mouthful. And to be honest, we still have more of chapter 4. We ended at the top of page 45 because that is a lot to digest and we don't want to overwhelm. So we're going to do a part 2 of the chapter 4 and we're going to complete it. Okay, guys? This one was really great. Even me myself, I had some memories floating around in my mind how recently I got so upset about a situation. And I was so upset that I've kind of like just blacked out. I didn't want to hear anything, I didn't want to take anything. But I remember my husband saying that sometimes you got to just reset. You got to reset and you gotta sit down and you kind of got to just really see where the other person is coming from, even if you do not agree. And oftentimes we may not agree in a relationship about certain things. But if you love that person, then you will at least try to have some perspective about where they're coming from. So we're going to pick back up with the ending of chapter 4. This is your host, Free at What's Happening Podcast. And remember to subscribe to us on IG at What's Happening Live Podcast. And subscribe to us on YouTube at What's Happening Podcast with Free Body Soul Talks. All right, enjoy the rest of your night. Peace.